will help fund the revitalization of Vancouver's Chinatown. The $1.8 million will help renew and reinvigorate the community after it was hit particularly hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. The Chinatown Foundation says a majority of the money will be spent to modernize buildings and garden areas. The rest will be spent to create 50 new jobs for the annual Light Up Chinatown Festival in September. More out of Vancouver, the BC search and rescue team that self-deployed to the earthquake zone in Turkey a week ago is set to return home. The Burnaby Urban Search and Rescue Team will arrive at the Vancouver airport late this afternoon. The team shared an update with the city about city of Adiyaman last Friday, saying its members had taken part in the successful rescue of a woman buried beneath rubble more than 4 days after the devastating quake. Team Director Scott Murchan told Global News that he heard the woman suffered some injury to her kidneys due to the lack of water while she was trapped, but other than that, she was doing okay. Some updates on the Michigan State University shooting. Police say the gunman who killed himself hours after fatally shooting 3 students at Michigan State University was 43-year-old Anthony McRae. MSU Deputy Police Chief Chris Rosman says they are still trying to determine McRae's motive.
We have absolutely no idea what the motive was at this point. We can confirm that the 43-year-old suspect had no affiliation to the university.
Police also say 5 people who are in critical condition are also students. The 32nd annual February 14th Women's March is happening today. Reporter Dennis Shinolu has more.
Every Valentine's Day since 1992, a march has been held in Vancouver's downtown east side through the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Advocate Evelyn Youngchief spoke on what participating in this march meant to her.
I lost a lot of friends at the Kitchen Farm, so having to march every year is meaningful. It's hard. It's getting easier though, but as time goes by, there's more and more women. So we're marching for women. We don't even know who they are, but we work with you. It's a lot of work.
This march is an important event to honor and remember Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQ+ people who have been murdered or are still missing. Dennis Shinolu, 1680, The Crow.
A feature film about residential school survivors' experiences traveling to communities on Vancouver Island to educate people. Kiara Collins reports.
Bones of Crows is told through the eyes of Aline Spears, a Cree matriarch. The movie shows her battles with systemic racism, sexual assault, and malnutrition while surviving Canada's residential school system. Jerome Turner, the location manager of the film, speaks about the importance of this story.
The importance of this project is just to be a spark of a conversation between every facet of Canada, the world, just knowing the truth of what happened. Everything that happens in this film really did happen based on testimony.
Continuing this week, the movie will be shown in Victoria, Nanaimo, and Kingcome Inlet. I'm Kiara Collins with 1680 The Crow.
Some Evo car share users have noticed an uptick in issues with the rideshare service. Reporter Parmveer Kang has more.
Welcome to Evo. Use the app to report any cleanliness issues or damage.
Evo car share users have noted issues, but not regarding cleanliness or damage. Rather, issues such as not being able to find the Evo that they booked or not being able to access a car in a private parking garage. User Steve Bond encountered a much more uncommon problem one morning when he was trying to get to work.
And I got to where it was supposed to be and looked around and it wasn't obvious where it was. I was standing outside of an impound lot and the car was on the other side of the fence in the impound lot.
This incident took place after Bond had not been able to locate a different Evo that he had booked earlier that morning. Bond described the experience as incredibly disappointing and frustrating. Parmveer Kang, 1680, The Crow.
We are now joined live with reporter Parmveer Kang. Parm, why are these issues being brought up now?
Well, this past weekend, a Reddit user shared a post to the subreddit of Vancouver regarding recent issues that he had noticed with finding cars that he had booked out. Now, that post received over 70 comments with people agreeing with his concerns, as well as noting other issues that they've encountered with Evo CarShare.
And Parm, what does Evo have to say about these issues?
Well, Evo CarShare acknowledges that they understand that these issues are relevant, but they also say that they haven't noticed a recent uptick, as users have mentioned.
Thanks, Parm.
Thanks, Evan.
The Federal Minister of International Development and BC's Minister of Jobs is announcing training opportunities for well-paying jobs today. Reporter Carissa Cheng with more.
The announcement is at BCIT's Richmond Aerospace Technology Campus and comes in the middle of BC's Chamber of Commerce Week. According to a statement by the BC government, the province provided over $500 million in grants to local business owners and invested in affordable childcare over the past few years. The conference today might give locals insight on government initiatives to help more people enter the workforce. This is a developing story. Carissa Cheng, 1680 The Crow.
Canadians are upset about the rise in grocery prices. The members of Parliament summoned grocery store CEOs to answer. The Canadian press reporter Lisa Lapointe has more.
Yesterday, a House of Commons committee studying food price inflation called on the CEOs and presidents of Loblaw, Metro, and Empire to attend an upcoming meeting. NDP MP Alistair McGregor gained unanimous support from Liberal, Conservative, and Bloc Québécois MPs for his request. The committee also agreed to extend the length of its study by adding more meetings. Last year, the Liberal government ordered the Competition Bureau to study food prices at grocery chains, saying they want to ensure price fairness. Lisa Laporte, The Canadian Press.
The United States and its NATO allies have met in Brussels today for the 9th time to talk about military aid and assistance for Ukraine. With the war set to surpass the one-year mark at the end of next week, so far billions of dollars in weaponry, tanks, anti-missile systems, and equipment have been delivered to Ukrainian forces. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin says that training on these sophisticated systems is also key.
We continue to work together to provide Ukraine with full combat-credible capabilities, and not just equipment. And that's why we discussed synchronizing our donations into an integrated training plan. And you can see the importance of our coordination and our common efforts to meet Ukraine's needs for armor.
The chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff says that the first U.S. missile fired at an unidentified object over Lake Huron missed the target. The acknowledgement by General Mark Milley of the errant strike follows questions about whether the shooting down of aerial objects that military officials didn't pose a threat create necessary risks. Milley says precautions were taken beforehand to ensure the safety of everyone in close proximity to the objects.
So we go to great lengths to make sure that the airspace is clear and the backdrop is clear out to the max effective range of the missile. And in this case, the missile landed harmlessly in the water of Lake Huron. We tracked it all the way down, and we made sure that the airspace was clear of any commercial or civilian or recreational traffic.
The object taken down Sunday was the third in as many days to be shot from the skies. The White House has said that objects differed in size and maneuverability from the Chinese surveillance balloon that the U.S. fighter jet shot down earlier this month, but that their altitude was low enough to pose a risk to civilian airspace. The unveiling of ChatGPT has panicked some educators who fear students will use the artificial intelligence-powered chatbot to write their essays and cheat on their homework. Some teachers are inviting the artificial intelligence to class.
Donnie Piercy instructed his 23 students in Kentucky to try to outwit the robot that was churning out writing assignments. He says instead of looking for information, ChatGPT is actually creating.
So if you ask it to write a play about 4 fifth graders and here's the problem that happens, it'll do that for you.
It can.
Looking at the weather for today, the current conditions is mostly sunny with a high of 5 degrees. Thanks for listening to your news update at 12 o'clock on 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
Everything is changing to digital. Everything is online. People aren't just waiting for the 6 o'clock news anymore. People want their news right now. They want to be able to go onto their smartphone, onto the internet, and see the news that they want to see.
Vancouver is growing at, a really rapid rate, the Lower Mainland even, and with the tools that we're given here, we're able to cover all of that.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Radhika Sikakane.
In the program, they really leave it up to you. I mean, the help is there when you need it, figuring out how to use the programs like Premiere, Audition, and figuring out how to use the cameras. But it's up to you to sort of experiment and figure out what you can do when you go out in the field.
They brought candles and flowers to remember the student who lost her life yesterday.
Theresa May says the international community condemns Moscow.
They really make sure that you know the basics and you are able to put out a quality product.
I'm Brady Tretnero.
And I'm Radhika Sikakane. Thank you for tuning in to BCIT Magazine.
This is sports on 1680 The Crow.
Welcome back to 1680 The Crow. My name is Evan Tate, and this is your sports update. Starting in Europe with some big soccer matches, two highly anticipated UEFA Champions League games have just kicked off, with AC Milan looking to knock Tottenham out of the competition. Also just kicking off, World Cup champion Lionel Messi, along with Mbappe, Neymar, and PSG's side, is taking on Canadian star Alphonso Davies and Bayern Munich in the first of a two-leg series. The games mark the start of the knockout phase for the 2023 UEFA Champions League. Just 16 of Europe's most talented soccer clubs remain in the tournament, that number dwindling to 8 following this round. Checking in with the Canucks, they are practicing today following last night's 6-1 loss against the Detroit Red Wings. Sheldon Dries scored the Canucks' lone tally, with Red Wings' Dylan Larkin putting home 2 goals for the second straight game against the Canucks. Canucks gave up 3 third-period goals in the game last night. Defenseman Oliver Ekman-Larsson says his team needs to be better in the third.
We have to manage the game a little bit better in the third to kind of hang around a little bit and get our chances, but we couldn't do that, so that was a couple steps back, I would say.
They are back in action tomorrow night to host the New York Rangers. As for the NHL games tonight, 18 teams are set to play with some high-profile matchups. The Stanley Cup champion Colorado Avalanche will face off against the talented Tampa Bay Lightning. Also tonight, the first-place Boston Bruins will be in Texas to go against Jason Robertson and the Dallas Stars, who currently sit atop the Central Division. As for the Canadian teams, the Canadiens will host the Chicago Blackhawks at 4 p.m., the Jets will host the Kraken at 5, and the Ottawa Senators travel to Long Island to compete against the newly acquired Bo Horvat and the New York Islanders. Staying with hockey, let's look at the WHL games for tonight. Just one BC team is in action, with the Prince George Cougars set to take on the Saskatoon Blades. Also tonight, Swift Current Broncos are playing the Brandon Wheat Kings, and Tri-City is in Seattle to face off against the Thunderbirds in a U.S. Division rivalry. Moving over into some basketball, the Raptors will be at Scotia tonight to tip off against the Orlando Magic. Orlando, who are looking to make it 4 straight wins tonight, sit just 3 games back of the Raptors for the last spot in the play-in series. Some other big games tonight, Jason Tatum and the Boston Celtics are in Milwaukee to face Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks. Warriors are also in action tonight, heading a bit south to play against Kawhi Leonard's Los Angeles Clippers. Sacramento is set to face the new-look Phoenix Suns featuring Kevin Durant, and our last game tonight will see the Washington Wizards in Portland to go against Damian Lillard and the Portland Trail Blazers. Taking a look back at the Super Bowl on Sunday, Lisa Dwyer gives us some perspective on the stats.
Sunday's Super Bowl was the 3rd most watched television show in history, with an estimated 113 million people watching the Kansas City Chiefs rally to defeat the Philadelphia Eagles. Rihanna's halftime show averaged 118.7 million viewers, making it the 2nd most watched Super Bowl halftime show in history. Katy Perry's 2015 performance still holds the top mark at 121 million. According to Adobe Analytics, the digital feed averaged a Super Bowl record 7 million streams. That's an 18% increase over last year, and more than double Fox's 2020 Super Bowl. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
Moving into some baseball, the Toronto Blue Jays kicked off their early spring training camp today in Dunedin, Florida. That's your sports update for 12 o'clock. My name is Evan Tate, and thank you for listening to 1680 The Crow.
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow. Now it's time for the comment.
Burnaby is developing very quickly. It is home to new high-rises, rich cultural heritage, and diverse restaurants. Yet, despite that, there is a significant lack of public art spaces for residents and visitors to enjoy. Burnaby has a unique opportunity to showcase work from a variety of communities in the city, a city home to many students and people of all demographics. Yet, the public arts in the city do not exhibit that. Most of the artwork in the city, such as the dark and metallic statues of random things like a shoe or an octopus in the newly developed Station Square area, are drab and blend into the background, making the artwork barely noticeable. Other areas in Burnaby that attract a lot of foot traffic, such as Brentwood, Metrotown, and the Heights, can take inspiration from neighborhoods in Vancouver that are home to beautiful murals. As a result of these murals, festivals and exhibitions take place in the city, which adds to the community. Public art is an important part of a city. It has the power to transform public spaces and create a sense of community. Shivani Joshi, 1680, The Crow.
It's extremely important for people to stay healthy and to stay active as much as possible.
This is 1680 The Crow, and you're listening to our feature presentation.
Hello, and welcome to the first episode of The Crow Chronicles, a podcast made possible by BCIT Journalism students. I'm Jerison Rashon.
And I'm Melanie Levesque. During today's episode, we are going to analyze the evolution of food culture. Vancouver has always been an inventive spot for food, due to many cultural influences. The city can take credit for popular foods such as the California roll, created here by chef Ichiro Masato in the 1980s. This melting pot of culture and evolution took a city that was once only known for French cuisine and nurtured it into a place remembered for culinary diversity.
First, we'll hear from Alexandra Gill, a food critic for the Globe and Mail. Plus, we speak with George Siu, one of the founders of the popular local restaurant Memphis Blues Barbecue House. Prepare for your mouth to water.
To our surprise, there are few food critics in Vancouver. Alexandria Gill is among the most experienced, reviewing restaurants and providing expert food recommendations for Vancouverites looking to experience the city through taste. Here are some of the highlights from our interview with her.
Alexandra started as a food critic in the early 2000s. She recalls the innovation of the city's scene even in its early days.
The scene was so far ahead of the curve. I mean, all of the trends that are commonplace now, farm-to-table cooking, sustainable seafood, farmers markets, drinking local wines and spirits. I mean, that was all happening here in 2001, like 22 years ago, long before it was popular in Toronto.
A new development in Vancouver's food culture, the Michelin Star Guide has recently given stars to restaurants in the city. Alexandra Gill spoke of her thoughts on the news.
I mean, the Michelin Guide was just announced, 2 weeks ago in Vancouver. And the restaurants that were recognized with 1 stars were, very small, a lot of chef-owner restaurants with, farm-to-table menus, a real expression of, of the owner. I mean, they were small and personal and intimate.
The everyday person might believe that being a food critic's job involves using opinions and judging based on personal likes and dislikes. But as Alexandra told us, this is not true.
For me, it's really important to say this isn't about me and it's not about my dislikes. When I'm judging a restaurant, I always consider, what was the intent of the chef? What is this supposed to taste like? What does he want it to taste like? I always try to take myself out of the equation and remember that my preferences don't matter. I'm not important. I'm trying to determine whether the food being prepared is being prepared as the chef intended and as it properly should be.
Alexandria, what do you think is the best kind of food to experience in Vancouver currently?
I mean, we have a lot of great Asian cuisine in Vancouver. That's one thing we do really well, especially Chinese cuisine.
Are there any kind of cuisines to look out for currently gaining traction here?
It took a long time for the restaurants to catch on, but now we have some great plant-based restaurants and products. Blue Heron Creamery, she does some of the best vegan cheeses in the world. They're all aged the way, a real cheese is, using cashew or now lentil-based foundation. Yeah, I think we're really taking off in the vegan scene. Some of those up-and-coming chefs. Elephant, there's a chef called Justin Lee who oversees this very small restaurant called Elephant, sort of in Strathcona, the distillery district. And he's doing some fascinating, foods. It's hard to describe, it's like, but he uses a lot of unsung vegetables and a lot of radicchio, and he makes or chicories, and he makes desserts with chicories because he has to use up all his chicories to help the farmers out. Or he uses a lot of sort of offcuts, like his burger is made with beef hearts. Delicious burger, you wouldn't even know it's made with heart, but it's leaner and he does this sort of because he wants to save the planet. Like, this is his small little contribution to climate change. So he's using unsung animal parts and lesser known vegetables and doing it in a very small scale, very inventive, and a lot of interesting Asian influences in his food, which is part of the whole Vancouver fabric.
What restaurants would you recommend to someone who wants to experience the best that Vancouver has to offer?
Yeah, there are some quintessential restaurants. Like, I often say go to Kinyo Izakaya on Denman Street because that's really what Vancouver does well, that sort of Japanese elevated izakaya. Go there to understand, the origins of it, and just have some really great food and some great drinks in a fun little place. I would say go to Burdock & Co. This is one of the restaurants that won a Michelin star last year. I think her cooking epitomizes the Pacific Northwest. She was really responsible in developing a lot of the relationships with the small organic farms that, now service all sorts of farm-to-table restaurants. But, she created those pathways, and she's been very important to our locavore cuisine. She was the first one to do a 100-mile diet. And she's just such a beautiful chef. I mean, her style is, you're always going to find something new and different there with local organic ingredients and new ways of cooking. And she has a very sort of Japanese style way of cooking as well, which is something we do really well here. Regionally minded, locavore, regionally minded or local, locavore, people really do support small local farms here. Asian. We are an Asian city, and we have a very broad, diverse Asian cuisine. Wholesome. There's a lot of dedication to healthy living. It isn't not necessarily vegan, but we have lots of fried food. But I mean, sort of our commitments to sustainable seafood, to buy organic produce, to even letting local wineries and natural wines that we grow here now, and eating good local foods. I mean, that's local well, but I think wholesome is a little bit different here.
So after our discussion with Alexandria, there was a bit that we were surprised about, and she told us a lot of things that I would not have assumed about food scene here as someone who lives here. For example, there's actually very few food critics left in the country. In big cities like Toronto, there are actually no food critics. So she considers herself like a dying breed, as her work is very expensive reviewing restaurants, and she really keeps the food reviewing alive here in Vancouver.
Well, I was surprised during that interview is that she said something about the city being a capital for vegan cuisine, because I know the city has some famous vegan brands, including Eve's Veggie Dogs and Diet Cheese. And then she also kind of listed a few vegan restaurants that caused the city to become a place for vegan cuisine.
Yes, I was also very interested in the way she talked about being a food critic and how to be unbiased. When I watch TV shows of popular chefs like Gordon Ramsay, they eat things and then they're like, I don't like this. But she talked about how it's not her personal likes or dislikes, it's about having an open mind. And I think that's very fascinating because the whole point of being a critic is to express your thoughts and feelings, but she does that in a way that doesn't include her personal opinions.
There was the type of restaurants called casual restaurants where you can go inside the restaurant without making a reservation.
I think that the Vancouver food scene is all about the experiences. She talked about how some restaurants are working to save the environment and other restaurants are working to bring back traditional cuisine. And I think that it's very fascinating that all these little experiences are so close together in our area, and we should be grateful to have such diverse foods to try.
And it's also kind of interesting that, Rob Feeney, who is the chef of one of the most famous restaurants in not only the city but also the country, Lumiere's, he left that restaurant because of ownership reasons to actually be the resident chef at the Cactus Club Cafe and turned the food there from being mediocre to be chef quality food.
Yeah, it's great to hear the stories of people who made themselves into a success through their talent. And it's interesting to think that that's happening here on such a large scale and that the restaurant industry is ever expanding. So talking with Alexandria really opened up my eyes to what I should be trying more and stepping out of my comfort zone.
And hopefully that there'll be more food critics probably in the future.
Yeah, hopefully they don't all stop because it's important to hold the restaurants accountable.
Now, a spotlight on one of those local restaurants in Vancouver. There were a lot to choose from, and we asked them if they are willing to tell the story about their restaurant. The Memphis Blues Barbecue House is considered as the first restaurant in Canada to offer Southern barbecue cuisine. The story of how Southern barbecue came to Vancouver began when Just Desserts founder George Siu and wine instructor Park Hilfinger were at a stopover in Memphis. George explains what happened with their first experience of a pulled pork sandwich.
We had a stopover at an airport, and a lot of flights don't have food on the plane anymore. So we were looking for something to take on the plane, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw this big lineup out of this little window, and I realized, oh my God, they're selling pulled pork sandwiches. So we grabbed a couple and we got on a plane. And of course, when we got on the plane, the smell of it, everybody was just like, oh my God, we're getting pulled pork sandwiches. No, you're not. You're getting your peanuts. We're getting pulled pork sandwiches. So we took a bite and we knew right then, okay, we're going to have to replicate this without bastardizing it. It has to be authentic if we're going to do this. And that's how it started.
The key of making authentic Memphis barbecue are the equipment and supplies that are used to smoke the meat.
So we decided to take a trip down to the World Barbecue Championships in Memphis back in May. Memphis in May, it's called. I mean, the whole secret was low and slow and use fruit woods. Down there, they use hardwoods like pecan, white oak, things like that is hard to get in Canada. So we ended up using fruit woods, which is like cherry wood, apple wood. Those are fantastic for smoking. And anyway, that's how we got it all going to be as authentic as we could. And at the beginning, when we first opened, pulled pork was the big seller because nobody in Vancouver got pulled pork. Now you see it everywhere on everybody's menu. But they don't do it in a pit. They probably braise it in an oven and they add liquid smoke. We still do it the proper way. We have a giant smoker in every restaurant. We put fruit woods in the back and hardwoods in the back, and we have pork shoulders that we smoke for 14 hours. And we still hand pull our pulled pork every morning when we come in. And I think a lot of places that you see that have pulled pork on the menu, they're already come prepared, and all they do is reheat it. You can order it off of a supplier, right? Because lots of companies do that now. Some other barbecue chain has a commissary, and they pre-smoke all their ribs and pulled pork and everything, and they ship it to their restaurants, and all they do is reheat. Whereas in every one of our restaurants, everybody has to cook, has to smoke, has to make the sauces, has to make, rub the meat, order it in, and load it in the pit. and be mindful of the cooking times and everything else. Well, the briskets and the pulled pork are the bigger cuts. They're cooked overnight and they take 14 hours. The ribs and chickens vary depending on the size of the chickens, and the ribs. Because we're dealing with an animal product, it's not like it's a widget. They come in different shapes and sizes in a sense that depending on the time of year too, the feed also affects the fat content on the animals. So that's why you can't just say, oh, it's 4 hours for this, 2 hours for that. You have to still open the pit, look at them, play with it, do all the little tests that you go through to make a perfect load.
So do you have to be there super early to do all this stuff? It sounds like a lot of work.
Prep shift starts anywhere between 6 or 7 in the morning. Sometimes, depending on the day and how busy our catering is, my prep guy will work a graveyard shift. So he'll come in at midnight, just as we're getting ready to leave the night shift. He comes in, we tag out, and he's here all night working. And then the first person in, depending on how heavy the day is, might come in at 7 and take over and just keep going. And then the rest of the staff start coming in, right, early in the morning. So yeah, it is a lot of work, and we still do, all the stores still do their own cooking and smoking. Nothing comes out of a box and just gets served.
So your restaurant has been highly praised with awards. Care to tell us what it was like winning your first award?
It was the Vancouver Magazine Awards, and we had no idea we would win because we were up against Gotham's at the time and a few other big heavyweights, and we won for best meat. And David Eisenstadt, who owns all the kegs, or used to own all the kegs, Highs and also Gotham's, was very annoyed that we won because he's been into our place and he thought, these guys spent like 90 grand renovating that restaurant. I spent 2.5 million renovating mine. How could you guys have given that award to these guys?
So at its core, what is the main message behind your restaurant?
Not just good food and authentic barbecue, bringing people together.
Great. Thanks, George.
So both of us went to the Memphis Blues Barbecue House, and the food there was actually very authentic.
It was interesting to go visiting after our interview because we got to take a step into what we already knew and with new background information about the restaurant. And so it was really cool to see that in action. The food was super yummy.
Yeah, I had a pulled pork sandwich and it was soft. The barbecue sauce gave it a powerful taste that you could actually put that sauce on anything.
Yeah, I'm not much of a meat eater, but the poutine was really good and the iced tea was also really good. And the waitress was really friendly.
I remember the poutine, actually putting that barbecue sauce on it as well adds even more flavor with the gravy and the cheese.
Yes, and after speaking with George, I knew a lot going into the restaurant. I instantly recognized the giant smoker, so that was kind of fun. And the atmosphere is very nice. The art in there is really nice. The music really takes you into the Memphis Blues spirit.
And the cornbread, which is like a side with most meals in the restaurant, it actually tastes better if you put the sauce on it. There were also 2 other sauces that you can actually use. There's a barbecue sauce that has more smoky flavor, as well as a Carolina mustard that kind of adds tang to some meats.
Yeah, so overall, a really good experience. I would definitely go back when I'm very hungry because the portion sizes are very big. But it was good overall, and it was interesting to go there because that's not the type of place that I think I would go unless someone told me about it.
I'll probably eat the beef brisket next. While on their meals, they put a lot of barbecue sauce on top of the meat. With your poutine, they put a lot of barbecue sauce on top of the fries. For my pulled pork sandwich, they put a lot of sauce inside the sandwich. Even the sides that were included with the sandwich, you can actually put them inside it in case you're running out of any of the toppings in it.
After trying the poutine, which is probably one of my favorite foods, I would definitely be open to trying the other menu items because it's just such an interesting cuisine and you don't get to taste it that much here. So I would definitely be open to trying it again, and I think everyone should give it a try. It's a very country feel, a very authentic feel, and family dining, casual atmosphere that really makes everyone comfortable and ready to eat. You can really see the inspiration, and it's like stepping into Memphis, so it's really cool to see that culture that's developed over the years and see how it made it all the way to Canada, so definitely recommend for a try.
This has been another episode of the Crow Chronicles. We have more stories to tell about British Columbia.
If you have comments and suggestions for us, feel free to contact us through our social media platforms, Twitter at BCIT Journalism and Facebook and Instagram at BCIT News.
You can also contact me through my personal social media accounts. I'm on Twitter at Jerison Urashun.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.